Hey, so welcome to my podcast. I want to go solo today, just a shorter podcast. I want to give you maybe a 30,000 foot view of what I'm up to, where I'm headed with this podcast, which is now called 13 Minutes Why Every Man Needs a Why. And yeah, give you a little State of the Union. I've been having a lot of guests on. It's been fun to have other people, men in particular, to talk about their journey. And I guess that's really what I'm all about these days. And what my passion and purpose in life is to help people in general, but now at this juncture, men in particular, to discover and live their why. So why is that so important to me? Why am I so passionate about it? Well, if you've listened to my different iterations of podcasting, different names, different times, you've heard me talk about my dad. My dad was my childhood hero. I loved him, still love him, but he hasn't been here for the past 18 years, coming up on 18 years. And I've had to work through a lot of stuff around that because he didn't die of natural causes. It was very unnatural. It was the most unnatural thing there is, by definition, to commit suicide. And yes, I said commit suicide. I know the PC term is complete suicide. I tried saying that for a while, but it felt disingenuous and also inaccurate. Yes, commit comes from a crime. And although I do believe people are out of their right minds when they do commit suicide, nonetheless, still a crime. And they pay the ultimate price. I say commit suicide because my dad violated um, his contract in this lifetime to himself, above all. I mean, certainly to me, to his wife, to his kids, to his grandkids, but to himself, right? We all have that choice, every single one of us. It's the ultimate choice that we all have. And I do believe that both at a spiritual level, at a human level, at a relationship level, we have a duty to fulfill our contract, to come into this world, to take care of one another, and to leave when it's our appropriate time. And that's not up for us to decide, but it's a deeper conversation for another time, and we can debate the point. I'm sure I'll hear from some of you who don't like that. That's how I navigate and see the world. And I believe my dad wants me to hold him accountable. That's another aspect of it. I don't believe in this higher state of consciousness, which you can call it heaven, you can call it the afterlife, the hereafter, it doesn't matter what you call it. I believe deeply that he is there out of his pain body, as Eckhart Tolle calls it, out of his fear, out of the things that drove him to kill himself. I believe he is there now, asking me, wanting me, needing me and his loved ones to hold him accountable. I know that because as a man, that's what I want to be in this world, held accountable by the people who I've committed to, who depend on me, who love me, and whom I love and serve, to hold me accountable. And when I fall, when I fail, I don't want them to say no big deal or, rename it, rebrand it. No, I want to be held accountable in this lifetime, and I want to hold the people I love accountable, especially my heroes. And when a hero falls, I want to be able to look at him as in his entirety. I think it's wrong to both whitewash a person's legacy, like I hear people doing with the JFKs and the MLKs. These were not perfect people. These were men with very tainted legacies. And when we portray them as saints, we don't do ourselves or them or the world a service. We have to look at a man in his entirety, and also not to cancel a man on his because of his worst moments. I don't believe in cancel culture, and I also don't believe in sanctification culture. What is it called? Beatification? I can't remember the word. It's not my tradition, but to make somebody a saint. So that's what my work is all about, is holding the people I love, the people I guide, accountable at the deepest level. On one extreme, canceling; on the other extreme, whitewashing. And in between is this sacred space of, can we hold the tension of the complexity of being human? And so that's what I do. I'm so passionate about creating sacred, safe, brave space for men to come in, to drop the armor, to take off the mask, to enter into authentic conversation. So many men I know, particularly, my age, midlife and onwards, don't have that. or haven't allowed for it, haven't made space for it. How many guys do I talk to? I say, do you have friends? Yeah, absolutely. Do you talk to them about your struggling marriage, your failing business, your health issues, your addictions, your failings, flaws, shortcomings? No, we play golf, we play poker. These are buddies, they are not friends. If you can't tell the man across from you the most intimate, deepest, darkest spaces of your life, then we have different definitions of what a friend is. To me, that's an acquaintance, that's a colleague, that's a contemporary, but that isn't a brother. And that's what I'm interested in. And I have so many brothers, one biological, but many emotional, spiritual brothers. And what I do all day, every day now is I hold space for them to come into my office or do it virtually, to remove the masks, to take off the cape, to stop bullshitting. I don't care if they're bullshitting the world. I don't even care if they're bullshitting their partner or their family or their friends. Are you bullshitting yourself? That to me is the pathway to hell and the pathway my father walked, because he started cutting out of his life many years ago his community, his family, his brothers, his wife, his children, his grandchildren, to the point where he had surrounded himself with variations, versions of those things, bits and pieces of it, but not people who were calling bullshit, who were holding up a mirror. That's my work in this lifetime. And that's what I want from the people across from me, to hold a mirror so that I can see truth, so that I can hear the truth, speak the truth, and be told the truth. And so he, little by little, shut those people, those communities out, and created an echo chamber. And at the end, the echo chamber was just him telling himself what he needed to hear, wanted to hear, and creating this vicious feedback loop to the point where he did kill himself. And I do hold him accountable for that. And so my work has been and is now single focused on helping men defy that tendency. And we all have that tendency, because it's hard to hear the truth, to speak the truth. It's sometimes, at least in the short term, easier to create a reality where we don't have to see it, we don't have to hear it, and we keep on going through our routines and our rhythms, surrounding ourselves with people who support that, who are doing similar things in their lives. And so when a man opens this door and he walks through it and comes into my space or on the phone or wherever it might be, that is my prerequisite that he's gotten to a place where he's done. It's very hard for me to work with men who haven't gotten to that place. Now, in Kabbalah, it's called the shattering, the shvira, the shattering. And the shattering, all great things begin in shatterings. I mean, think about, even if you're secular and don't believe in God, the universe, how did it begin? We talk about the Big Bang, an explosion of light, of life, but it was a shattering of the way it was prior to the birth of this universe, and then the unfolding of it. Think about tectonic plates, right? Moving, that's an earthquake, and there's now an opening and a shifting. Think about a baby being born into this world, right? A mother giving birth is a shattering, literally, of the womb and of that baby's comfort zone, coming out into a whole cold, harsh reality. There's a shattering. Well, shatterings aren't just those monumental moments in birth and creation. They're also on a person's path. And you can make it to midlife in some ways without a shattering, but you can't make it midlife onwards without a shattering unless you're just in absolute and utter denial. Because the shatterings, I call them sometimes the dark Ds, divorce, disease, death, despair, fill in the blank, doesn't have to start with D, but you get the point. You can make it to midlife without these things, but by midlife onwards, if you aren't shattered or have many of these shatterings, then you just are not ready to face reality. And so when a man walks through my door, has he had a shattering? What kind of shattering? The death of a father or a parent is oftentimes a shattering that brings a man through the door. The dying or death of a marriage or health, illness, relationship, disease, our physical well-being. It can be a child who's addicted, or our own addictions, or professional disappointment, failure, bankruptcy. There's a million of them. It doesn't matter what they are. It matters that when it happens, and it happens, are you ready to not only face it, which is a starting point, but to embrace it, to go into it, to stop running from it, stop doing what I call the void dance, avoidance, a dance around the void, and just dancing and dancing and dancing, more work and more money and more hobbies and a better golf swing and fill in the blank, a new wife, whatever it might be. It is so much easier for a person to change their context than to deal with the content, right? The content of a failed marriage. I'm just going to get a second marriage. No, let's do the work of going into that brokenness, that shattering. And as the Kabbalists say, to go into it to discover the sparks, called nitzuts in Kabbalah, but in English, just sparks. Sparks of what? Sparks of meaning, of potential, possibility, of hope, of life. That's what the mystics say is inside of the shattering, if we're willing to face it. If we're able to make our, as Viktor Frankl, my teacher mentor says, make our defiant stand and say, I'm not running. I'm done with the void dance, done dancing around the void. There's only one way through the void, and that's through the void. And I'm going into it to find the nitzuts, the sparks of meaning. Viktor Frankl, again, father of logotherapy. I'm a logotherapist. Logos means meaning. So it's meaning therapy, but I think of it as darkness diving, as spark seeking, going into the darkness to seek the sparks and to not come out until I have found them. And Frankl said this in the Holocaust. I mean, his wife murdered, his unborn child murdered, his brother, his parents, his family, his friend, everything stripped from this man. And yet he kept going into the darkness and he found his meaning. It doesn't make the darkness go away. It just dissipates it. But it's not gone. It's still there on the perimeter, and we got to stand guard against the darkness and keep seeking the sparks, and one spark and another spark, and fanning these sparks into a flame and guarding that flame, protecting it, growing it into a fire. And that fire becomes illuminating, and it couldn't have happened without the shattering, without the darkness. This is a total paradigm shift. We don't think of it this way. My dad didn't think of it this way. All he saw was his life was a constant series of losses and diminishment and, getting smaller, getting weaker, getting older. Bullshit. That's the lie that we've all been told. We live in a youth-obsessed culture where younger is better and newer is preferred. But in this other way of living, this logotherapeutic, this mystical, this man uprising kind of way, it's the opposite. It's the more life throws at us, the more descent we experience, the higher we can begin to ascend. So the more physically, as an example, a man diminishes, it can be seen as a negative. You know how many guys I talk to who are struggling with midlife onwards, their sexual desire, their just desire to have sex, to be sexual. And the market tells us, fix it. So go take a pill or get testosterone replacement. Nothing wrong with it. However, maybe we also need to go into the darkness and ask, what's the meaning? What's the purpose in this natural rhythm? It's totally natural to have your testosterone drop at midlife as a man. Again, doesn't mean don't replace it, but also don't think of it as only darkness, only a curse, only a shattering if you become sexually impotent. Right? What is there in the inside of that for us to learn, to discover the possibility? You might be saying, B, there is nothing about me not being able to get it up that is a blessing. And I would say bullshit, because the men I know in the first half of life make more mistakes thinking with the wrong head than probably any other source of suffering in their life. How many great men have been brought down over too much testosterone, acting on their impulse, following sexual desire? So don't tell me there's not something in there of worth, of meaning, and there is. Because as my testosterone has dropped, I have been able to think more clearly, to distance myself from sex and move into the place of intimacy. And my wife, Ariella, and I have more intimacy now than we did 25 years ago when we married. And certainly we don't have as much sex as we once did. Add that to, kids to that and all that. And teacher of mine, Dennis Prager, says, isn't it interesting, maybe even twisted, that which is inspired by passion, kids, ultimately crushes it. But there's meaning in that. And that as a man, I have to start relating to Ariella as more than just sexual. And of course, we did prior to that, but I can't lean on that as much anymore. And now I got to redefine sexuality and go more into intimacy and cultivating that. And now it's not just intimacy as a man at midlife that I have with my wife. If I said that as a younger man, people say, who are you sleeping with? But now as a midlife man, my intimacy is with all kinds of people, all my clients. I have true intimacy, as Wayne Dyer says, to see and to be seen. In my men's peer groups, oh my God, the most intimate, beautiful conversations I have ever known as a human being, other than my wife, are with these men. We come together once a month for 4 hours. This is men's peer groups. And for the first time for so many of these men, including myself, to be in a space with 9 other men, to drop the mask, to get rid of the bullshit. I do this work one-on-one, but it's even more powerful one-on-9. There's 10 guys in a group. And to show who I am financially and physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually, to drop the facade, to no longer play the games, to allow myself to be seen. I hadn't done this. I'm 53 years old. I had never done this until I entered into men's peer groups roughly around the age of 50. By the way, I ran peer groups, but I ran them so that I could hide behind the mantle of logotherapist, of Enneagram teacher, of rabbi, of all these masks that allowed me to distance myself from the group. So I got to be the sage on the stage. And then 3 years ago, roughly, entering into peer groups as a participant, I had never allowed myself to be seen. And the level of intimacy that came with other men has changed my life for the better in remarkable ways. So what does this all have to do with my father's suicide? Because I have seen in these peer groups and in this men's one-on-one work, it's the antidote to suicide. Suicide is a male epidemic. Of course, it impacts women directly because they take their own lives, and indirectly because every time a man takes his life, roughly 150, 200 people, according to a recent article I just read, are directly impacted forever. And I have to believe it's more than that, but that's still a large number because of all of the suicides in America. It's actually worse in some countries. 80% of them are male. 80% are male. In any other category, we would say that's an epidemic of male-female proportions. This is a male epidemic. 20% is too much for women. 80% is 4 times more likely, is far too many for men. That breaks down to, well, here we go. 1 man kills himself every 13 minutes in America. I think it's higher than that in England. Every 13 minutes, a man chooses to kill himself, to leave this world voluntarily. 13 minutes is why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I renamed this podcast. That's the work that I'm doing in men's work and in these peer groups, that we have to defy that number. We have to change that number. I don't believe we'll ever get rid of that number. Suicide has been around since the beginning of time, but if we can shift it back 1 minute, just 1 minute, to every 14 minutes a man kills himself, that's roughly 3,000 men this year alone that will have chosen life. If we can do that, then we have made a major impact in this world. If we can just do one, if you're listening to this, you're that one, and you choose not to, then it's worth it for you and you alone. Just saving one life, according to the Talmud, is like saving an entire world. So let's defy that number. How are we going to do that? Well, the subtitle, Why Every Man Needs a Wife. As Viktor Frankl said, if you have your why, you can endure anyhow. That's why I start with why. When a man walks through my door, I ask him the harshest question possible. This is a question that, you get in probably in trouble for in this day and age. You got to put a trigger warning on it for sure. Viktor Frankl would ask this of his patients on the first visit, and I asked my men this, and I'm asking you now, why haven't you killed yourself? What? Why haven't I killed myself? That's a harsh question. It's a liberating question because the only thing I know when you're walking through that door is you haven't killed yourself. So why? And we better know that why. We better dig into that why. We need to build on that why. I came close to killing myself 10 years ago. I don't know if I've shared this out loud. I'm sharing it now. I'm done playing games. I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending. I dropped the rabbi persona and the logotherapist persona and all the personas. And now I'm just a man walking through hell with other men. As I always say, walking them through hell to get to heaven. Why did I almost kill myself? Because I was on top of the world. I was a very successful rabbi, top of my game, lifetime contract, building one of the fastest growing congregations in the US, wrote a book called Revolution of Jewish Spirit that tracked our success, people coming in from around the country, growing by leaps and bounds. By the time I left, we're talking thousands of members and hundreds of people coming on the Sabbath, on Shabbat, just redefining the paradigm. Unbelievable. Anything I wanted, I needed. Needed a car, it showed up. Needed a house, got a massive reduction. The list goes on and on. Hitting on every level, I had achieved mastery. And yet I felt myself dying slowly for 1,000 reasons I'm happy to tell you about on another podcast or another time. But I was dying. I was living somebody else's life. The old saying, I climbed the ladder of success to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. It wasn't my wall. It was until it wasn't. I don't regret it. I'm so honored to have done it. I'm so glad to have passed the baton to somebody who it's his calling. It just wasn't mine. And so Ariel and I decided it was an elegant way for us to fulfill a lifelong dream to move to the state of Israel, made Aliyah, became citizens, moved to the north, was in the north, I don't know, 20 miles from Syria, another 20 miles from Lebanon, up in the Galilee, and didn't speak the language, spoke a broken Hebrew, could communicate like a kindergartner, had just come from a place of mastery where people hang on my words, and now I can barely communicate, can I order a Big Mac at McDonald's? I didn't have a job, didn't even have a profession. Nobody needs a rabbi, trust me, in Israel, especially not a conservative rabbi. And I didn't want to do it anymore. Didn't have the obvious skill set that was I could monetize, I could make a living, was running out of money, was feeling like a failure, didn't have friends, didn't have community. And after 3 years of this, of scrapping and hustling and trying and failing and trying and failing, all I could think about was I was worth more dead than alive. It was like the movie, the famous movie, just forgot it, George. You know what it is. I know what it is. I just can't think of it. So the bottom line is I came to my rope's end and I thought I'm worth more dead than alive. And what kept me alive? There's a multitude of things, but there was one primary, and that is my why. Why haven't I killed myself? Why wouldn't I go to the 13th floor of the building I was working at a co-workspace? Because there was an open veranda, and I just kept thinking one more step, and your wife and your children are set for life. Because I thought my why is my 4 children. And I know the impact of my father's suicide and his mother's suicide. I'm a 3rd generation survivor. I will not make them generation number 4. I will not do this for them. At the very least, I will stay alive. That's my why. And that's a baseline why, but trust me, it's a safety net. You got to have your why. Now, that's not where the story ends. Of course, here we are 10 years later, and I rebuilt myself identity-wise. I'm no longer all these things that I thought defined me, stripping myself down to what Viktor Frankl calls the defiant power of my spirit and building on it. My why is to stay alive for my 4 kids and for my beautiful wife and then it became more of a proactive why. And now my why is a big, bold, beautiful mission statement that I say 3 times a day. And it is long and it is robust and it is powerful and it just causes me to stand up and say yes to life. Another great book by Viktor Frankl, every single day. I won't share it with you here. I've shared it in other podcasts, but I just say it over and over and over. And again, that's just a way to quantify it. That's not the end of my why. Now my why, to say it succinctly, is to help you, and men in particular, discover, articulate, and live their why. Because if you have your why, you can endure anyhow. Now, let me just say one thing. This isn't a podcast about suicide. This isn't a message about suicide. I'm not interested in suicide. I'm interested in the opposite of suicide. I'm interested in life. I'm interested in the opposite of surviving. I'm interested in thriving. So make no mistake about it. Yes, let's move that needle from 13 minutes to 14 minutes. But let's take the focus off of suicide and suicide awareness and put it onto why awareness, life awareness, thriving awareness, so that we can live more fully and freely and go out into the world to not only survive, to thrive. And I talk to guys all day, every day who aren't having suicidal ideation. They're not making plans like my father, researching it online. But if you're over drinking, excuse me, if you're having an affair and cheating on your wife and your family, if you're filling your void with sports, how many guys are sports addicts, and now it's a new season, and where's dad? He's on the couch, or he's you're a golfing widow married to a guy who's doing the void dance around golf. Then guess what? The same thing, suicide. It's just a longer process, a slower descent. I'd argue sometimes more cowardly too. I don't respect what my father did, but it was definitive. It was bold. He didn't drag us through the mud for 30 more years if he was going to live as a victim and floundering and destroying his life. So no, I'm not glad he did it. Yes, I wish I could go back and have him do it all over again. But to stay alive and to cause misery and suffering because you're not willing to make your defiant stand, you're numbing your life, you're, causing other people to suffer because of your addictions. Well, you know what? That is a form of suicide. So what's your why? Why are you going to stop? Why are you still here? Why are you alive? What's the next chapter going to be about? And coming full circle, the second half of life, which is where I focus my energies, can be and should be the most purposeful, passionate, powerful time of your life if you have new rules of being and new goals of what you're striving towards. And that means rethinking who you surround yourself with, the activities you engage, the work that you're here to do. In the first half of life, the question, what do you do to a man, always resorts in, I'm a banker, I'm a lawyer, I'm a whatever, truck driver. The second half of life cannot be, I'm a fill in the blank with my profession. Sure, keep on working, keep on making money, do your thing. But it also has to be, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a lover, I'm a poet, I'm a skier, I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I'm an author, I'm a person who walks on the beach and takes in the sunsets, whatever it is. All of these become part of our identity of who we are in the second half of life in a way that couldn't or we wouldn't allow for in the first half of life. So the second half of life is about taking back our power, our why, to really choose it for ourselves, to know it, to have it. Because when the shatterings come, and they will come, you better have your why. Somebody says to me, well, what's a why? And I say to them, okay, you're on an airplane. You hit turbulence. The thing starts to shake and you feel like it's going down. What comes out of your mouth in those final 10 seconds, a minute, however long it takes? That's your why. The things you're talking about, the people you're talking about, the values you're committed to, the God that you're praying to, whatever it is, that's your why. And we got to now say it, discover it, articulate, and say it and live it, more importantly, when there's no turbulence, when the good times are happening, when you're ahead of the storm, you're ahead of the plane crash, because the plane will crash. Ain't none of us getting out of this alive without a plane crash. So Let's do the work now proactively. Let's stop waiting around until a man is suicidal, until we're heading down the descent. Let's use this opportunity after the shattering to rebuild our lives. And it starts with why. And that's why every man needs a why. And that's why it's called the 13-minute podcast. Again, not a podcast about suicide, a podcast about a life lived on purpose, your why. Share this podcast with the men you know. And yes, the women too. Somebody says to me, why will you only help women? I am not only helping women. If I help your husband, your brother, your father, your friend, your uncle, your boss, discover and live their why, you're welcome, because we all benefit. The women in his life benefit immensely when that man discovers and lives his why. So this is a work that benefits all of us. This is a work specifically designed to bring men through my door one-on-one, to bring men, more importantly, at this juncture in my life, into peer groups. Man Uprising is also rebranded. That was my peer group organization with my two brothers, Dave Mann and Cam Moken, and we founded it as a pilot to kind of get peer groups going. But now Man Uprising is known as men's peer groups. Why? Because it's just descriptive. That's what it is. Join a men's peer group virtually here in Denver, but we're also bringing men's peer groups to organizations across the country. And men's peer groups now can support organizations, nonprofits or cause-driven companies or networks, alumni networks, and communities, JCCs, YMCAs, churches, synagogues, cause-driven businesses, to create a space in these communities to bring men together in a systematic way. These aren't just sort of sewing circles where we get together and we sew and we talk. It's a very structured process brought from best practice from business networking groups. We've created a 15-step process for every group, 4 hours a month. The same men get together. You commit for 1 year with these other 10 men total, and you learn how to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to go deep, to be real, to dig into this meaning, to articulate your why, to discover your why, to articulate your why, to live your why in a band of brothers. As I say, these are the men who will carry my casket one day. I've only known my peer group, one of my peer groups that I'm in, 2-3 years. I've known men for 53 years. These are the men who are carrying my casket. These are the men who bear witness to my journey. And that's what every man needs on his journey. I have the most loving wife in the world. We have the most deepest intimacy, and she'll never be that for me. She can't be that for me. She doesn't want to be that for me. She's got her sisters. These are my brothers. And every man needs a tribe of brothers to hold him accountable, to be there to, as I was told when I was a rabbi, to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And these men comfort my affliction and they afflict my comfort. And I am a better man for it. So men's peer groups, bringing them to organizations, to nonprofits, to networking groups, to alumni groups. If you are part of one of those, if you represent one of those, reach out to me. We're just piloting now some B2B opportunities, business to business or nonprofits. We're going to scale this up. Why? Because this is the only way that we can really move that needle from 13 minutes to 14 minutes. One-on-one work I'm so passionate about it. I'll keep doing it. It's the honor of my lifetime to walk side by side with one man, but it is the cause of my lifetime to scale this up through men's peer groups, to bring this out to the world so that we can shift from 13 minutes to 14 minutes, maybe one day to 15 minutes, and move the needle around the clock so that more men not only survive, but they thrive, and that you, the person with that man, benefits and has blessings because of it, because there's one better man in the world. And if that man is you, then reach out to me. Would love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at b@defiantspirit.org. My old email, still good, b@defiantspirit.org. And we can figure out how we all move forward in life and say yes to life together. So let's do that. Please tune in, listen to my podcast, listen to the podcast where Dave, my co-founder from now Men's Peer Groups, and I are interviewing other men. and just keep spreading the word. Leave us some good reviews. Really appreciate it as we start to scale up. Your support means the world. So thank you. And as I always say, defy your number, defy any number, especially that number, 13 minutes. Get out there and live your why.